Okay, let's be honest. When it comes to leaving the EU, it's all down to money, as are most things in this world. And we know that money is fake and it's not real and it's not backed up by anything and it's just numbers in a computer and it's just shifting them around. But to the economists, to the business people, to the politicians, and in some respects to the people in the Leave campaign, money makes the world go round. So, what is the cost of the European Union? How's this for a painless spending cut? Are you ready? Britain has paid the EU around £3,000 in the time it's taken you to listen to this so far. Yeah. Our annual tribute to Brussels now stands in pounds sterling 19 billion a year. That's right. That's billion with a B. If we kept that money at home, we could give the entire country a 2/3 cut in council tax, or we could build and equip 200 state-of-the-art hospitals. I think I know which I'd prefer. To put it another way, during the last Parliament, we saved £36 billion through the entire domestic cuts programme, yet over the same period, we gave Brussels £85 billion. The EU, in other words, wiped out our austerity savings twice over. It's true that some of the 19 billion is spent in Britain. Around half of what we hand over dribbles back to us in little bits and pieces, but a chunk of that goes on advertising the EU, or on hiring pro-Brussels consultants and contractors. Some goes to professional associations, charities and NGOs in the hope that it'll make them more pro-EU. Oxfam, for example, got more than £35 million last year just to remind them that the EU exists and that it's there. Not Europe, not the 28 member states, not the 28 countries, it's just the EU. And what does Britain get for its £19 billion? Amazingly, that vast sum buys us membership of the world's only stagnant trade bloc. North America grew by 3% this year, yet North America, even with its financial problems, it grew by 3% this year, and that's 3% more than the EU. Africa, Africa, they're all starving and we all have to send £3 a month and all that kind of stuff. Well, their trade bloc grew by 4.5%. Asia by 5%. But the Eurozone, after 6 years of flatlining, grew by less than 1%. Its economy today is no bigger than it was in 2008. That means Africa and North America and Asia are doing up to 5 times better than we are just being a member of the EU. And it's costing us £19 billion to be stagnant in the world trade. As long as we're in the EU, we can't sign independent trade deals with booming countries like India, Pakistan, Australia, New Zealand, which are amongst our oldest friends and whom, without us, they wouldn't exist. And we're still sending aid to India and Pakistan because they're classed as third world. And Australia and New Zealand still have our Queen as their monarch. But we can't sign independent trade deals with them. Back in 1973, when we joined, Europe looked like the future. Since then, the EU has shrunk from 36% of the world economy to 17%. No one is suggesting that we give up our trade with Europe. You see, you've got to make the difference between the EU and Europe. Europe is the landmass, it's the countries, it's the borders, it's the people, the wonderful people that make up those countries and on that landmass. What we're talking about getting rid of and leaving is the European Union, the EU. So let's just make that differential, all right? You don't have to be in the EU to be part of the common market. The European Free Trade Area stretches right across the continent, from non-EU Iceland to non-EU Turkey. No one is suggesting that we will leave that common market when we leave the EU. We will, though, regain our voice on the World Trade Organization. Whatever you might think of that organization, We will have our voice again. We will be able to sit at that table and have our slice of the cake and not have to share that one slice with 28 others. And our right to sign trade deals with non-EU states. Iceland and Switzerland, for example, while retaining full access to the European market, have signed free trade agreements with China. We can't do that. We lost control of our trade policy when we joined. That wasn't all we lost. We lost our fishing grounds, which should be of a great renewable resource. We lost our farming policy and are now paying more into the cap and getting less out of it. That's the Common Agricultural Policy than any other EU state. So we're paying more into the Common Agricultural Policy than we get out. We lost our special relationship with other English-speaking peoples. Many Brits from Commonwealth backgrounds find that they can't bring Auntie over for a wedding because we've had to crack down on non-EU visas so as to free up unlimited space for EU nationals with no connection to Britain. Worse, we've opened our borders to the EU, just as the EU has opened its borders to the entire world. This was never the deal. Saddest of all, we've lost a measure of our democracy on issues from benefits to prisoner voting. We find that we have ceded control to Brussels. As Jean-Claude Juncker, I always get his name wrong, the president of the European Commission recently put it, there can be no democratic choice against the European treaties. Basically, he doesn't want democracy. Jean-Claude Juncker says there can be no democratic choice against the European treaties. You have no democratic voice against the Lisbon Treaty, the Enabling Act. And he means it too. The EU already has a president, which you can't elect, and a foreign office, with people in it that you can't elect or get rid of, a parliament and a civil service, once again not accountable to you, a currency and a Supreme Court, once again not accountable to you, a passport and a driving licence, a national anthem and a flag. What does that leave Britain? As a province of Europe, a rate-capped local authority. Just think of your local authority, because that's all we are in the big scheme of things on this globe right now. Aren't we something more? We're the fifth largest economy in the world, the fourth military power, and one of 5 permanent seat holders in the UN Security Council. Can't we run our own affairs, trading with our European allies but governing ourselves? The 5th largest economy in the world, the 4th biggest military power, and one of the 5 permanent seat holders on the United Nations Security Council, and we can't even decide our own trade deals, and we can't even let our own Commonwealth people into our country because they come from outside the European Union. It's become clear that the EU is losing control of the economic crisis, losing control of its borders, losing control of its security, and probably losing control of its bowels. It's time for Britain to take back control, to strike a new deal with the EU based on trade and cooperation, not political union. That's why we should vote to leave. It's the safer choice. It's the sane choice. Let's have our own rights back. Let's have Westminster being a parliament, a government, and not just a rubber-stamping local authority like it is now.